Hola, soy Shyla Morgan, and this is my language and cultural contact presentation. In summary, I chose to focus on Medline Plus for 2 hours, Duolingo for 1 hour, my Spanish Lab video material for 30 minutes, and a video called ¿Qué es la diabetes? For another 30 minutes. Medline Plus was one of the links recommended for us to check out, and I actually spent quite a bit of time on there reading, studying, and taking down notes. This took up about 2 hours of my log time. The time actually just sort of flew by. Medline offered reading material that helped explain different health issues and diseases. I specifically spent a good portion of my time reading about cancer, diabetes, various infections, and symptoms. Some of the terminology that I learned was quimioterapia, chemotherapy, cáncer de hígado, liver cancer, cáncer de pulmón, lung cancer, desmayo, fainting, deshidratación, dehydration, and acidez estomacal, heartburn. What's neat about learning these terms in Spanish while logging my cultural contact hours is that much of the names of diseases in human anatomy were relatively the same to those in English. Their Latin roots are similar, especially for medical terminology, so it was easy for me to identify certain words even if I had never seen them before. There are many cultural differences in how people perceive pain, too. After reading about different cancers, it reminded me of traveling to Honduras last summer on a medical brigade. Last year, we actually had a childhood cancer charla. It's believed in the Honduran culture that cancer is an old person's disease, meaning that it's usually found only in adults, and that only adults are at risk for different forms of cancer. However, this isn't the case, and cancer is prevalent amongst all ages. For Duolingo, I actually started using Duolingo before taking this class to see where I was at with my Spanish after taking it in high school. I was surprised with how much of my previous Spanish vocabulary came back, with little practice. It turned out to be a great tool to practice Spanish vocabulary while away from the course, so it was a great learning and studying opportunity for general categorical words. Most of the vocabulary I was unfamiliar with. We ended up learning later on in the course in greater detail. Some of the vocabulary that I did learn was el diario, newspaper, la cerveza, beer, la tortuga, turtle, el pájaro, bird, el oso, bear, and disculpe, which could mean sorry, pardon me, or excuse me. There weren't many nuances for this particular app just because it was more of a learning and studying opportunity, and much of the vocabulary we actually learned later on in the course. For the My Spanish Lab video material, these videos were great in learning the new vocabulary at the start of our weeks. After watching these videos, I was able to pick out some cultural differences among those shown in the videos. The greetings are very intimate and close. There's a lot of arm and hand holding when speaking with someone older than you or that you're close with. There's also kissing on the cheek, which is very different from my culture and the ways I usually greet others. The moods during conversations are also very dramatic, very positive and very negative. You can tell by the sound in their voice. The videos also produced very typical and predictable situations that were culturally easy to understand. The videos also showed close relationships between big family and friends, which are similar to those I'm familiar with. Some of the terminology I learned throughout the My Spanish Lab video material were verdad, true, el sobrino, nephew, no sé, I don't know, por fin, at last, compuso, composed, carretera, highway, la misma, the same, el patrón, the boss. For my last contribution to my cultural language presentation was a video called ¿Qué es la diabetes? Similar to the Medline Plus readings, I watched this video that talked about diabetes in Spanish. Some of the new vocabulary words that I took away from the video were los niveles de glucosa, glucose levels, la sangre, the blood, generar energía, generate energy, células, cells, and alta presión, high pressure. Many of the words were also close to their translations in English, which is why I point out the note about similar Latin roots, making medical jargon somewhat understandable in both English and Spanish. Diabetes in Spanish-speaking countries is prevalent amongst those who live in rural communities. This is also the same for people who live all over the world, who don't have as much access to fresh produce and clean water. It's a really great opportunity to study Spanish for healthcare and learn terms in Spanish that will allow me to come in contact with and help those who do speak Spanish. Getting to practice new Spanish vocabulary and expose myself to sources other than our course material was a fun experience. It was neat to see and read about even the small, minor differences between cultures. Learning about Spanish medical vocabulary and global health especially were great because it's a universal type of culture.